I worked for the governor of New York State, and around that time doing, community affairs for the governor, Governor Pataki. And the night before, we had an event. And usually, when we have late night events, we are allowed to get into the office a little later. Well, the morning of September 11th, my phone starts ringing, and I get a call from a cousin in Greece. Because of the time change, they were seeing what was happening. Um, and so she was panicked and, said, "Where are you? What are you doing? And, are you downtown?" And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, "Turn on your TV, turn on your TV." So I scrambled out of bed and I went and I turned on the television and I saw what was happening. Obviously, I had missed the first plane. And I didn't immediately, obviously, I knew the towers as a New Yorker, born and raised. I knew Lower Manhattan, but it wasn't like I spent time down there. I worked in Midtown, I live in Queens. So I didn't really get anxious other than what's happening to my city, what's happening in the world kind of thing. And then I got a call from my colleague who said, "Anthoula, don't come in. Don't come in." I said, "James, what's happening?" And he said, "Don't come in. It's okay. We're going to figure it out. Don't come in." And then I got a call from my brother, George, uh, from his house in Queens. And he said, You got to come to mom's. You got to come to mom's. And I said, "What's happening? What's happening?" And he said, "John works in one of those buildings." My brother John worked on Wall Street. That's what we knew. We knew that John worked for Cantor Fitzgerald on Wall Street. I didn't know his physical address. I didn't know, I wasn't his wife to go out with him for happy hour with, his fellow colleagues. And so I didn't know that John worked, which is so strange to me now that I think back that he actually worked in the Twin Towers. It was just sort of like John works on Wall Street. Um, and I remember getting dressed, without any real like terror, going on. I remember I remember feeling sort of fine, and I put on a jean overall set, for comfort because I wasn't going to work, and my mom's house is only 10 blocks away, so I decided to walk. And I remember, as most of us do, that beautiful, beautiful blue sky above me as I walked to my mom's, and I, just walked to my mom's and thought everything's going to be fine, which is so strange. And I walked in, and my brother George, um, handed me John's business card, which of course has the physical address on the card. And I said, "Okay, but we know John, he's fine, Well, and by the time we figured out which was Tower One and which was Tower Two and, which building he was in, it was sort of a little bit of chaos. And my mom was just beside herself, but also not freaked out, as a typical mom would be, right? And my dad was in Greece, so obviously he was seeing what was unfolding, and he kept calling. And I remember feeling so bad for my father because here he is in a foreign country, and trying to make heads of 9/11, where we speak English and couldn't make sense of it. And I remember reassuring my dad, like, "Dad, everything's going to be okay. John's fine. He's going to come home." John was very much so a MacGyver type of person. And always, kind of a wild man and always very self sufficient. Um, so as we're watching the TV and we saw the second plane hit, I remember, watching the TV and sort of falling to my knees and gasping and feeling so awful for all those people, and for my city and for my country. And I still was in a fog, could not understand. Our phone was ringing off the hook. John's cell phone was ringing off the hook because he left that cell phone at home that day. I should mention that, of course, we were calling his cell phone, and that's how we discovered it was at home. And friends were calling, and family was calling, and the lines were busy, and we couldn't get through to his office, and no one was answering. And We were paying close attention to the news, trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And I remember starting, when the second tower fell, is when we all, sort of lost our sense of, calm, or whatever that was. And, we are a big Greek family, with a huge network of family and friends. And I remember people started to come by, to see what was going on once the word got out that John was in that building and the phone started ringing. And I remember people gathering at my house. And I also remember people randomly turning the corner and seeing the amount of people outside, and just random strangers pulling over to say, "Is everything okay? Do you have someone in the building?" Like, which I also remember quite clearly as feeling. I didn't think it was odd. I thought it was wonderful that people were so concerned. Um, I remember that we tried to call Cantor. We tried to get through to people at Cantor. Um, the first day was really, all these days sort of blend into each other, but the first day was really a day of like, we're gonna hold out. John's gonna come home. He's gonna get out. He's gonna walk over the bridge, and John. He's a phantom. He comes and goes. He disappears. He'll be home. He'll be home. And we kept trying to reassure my mom, and we kept trying to reassure my dad in Greece. And of course, all planes had been grounded, and there was no way he was going to get home. And the poor man was so upset, so confused. My mom was so upset. And now at this point in the middle of the afternoon, I guess, we figured, well, um, friends we were just waiting. It was just a waiting game, and we decided, because we started seeing people with posters. We weren't ready to do a missing poster yet because we were confident that he was coming home. um, I remember people bringing us food, lots of food. I remember calling my office and asking questions of my colleagues, the governor's staff. I remember there being no answers, and just being told to stay home and that things were going to be under control. It was just a very chaotic day. Obviously, night came. John didn't come home. And the irony is, we still held out hope. Like, when John didn't come home that night, we decided to create this missing poster. It took us forever to find a photo of him bare chested. And, you know, I guess we thought that, like, maybe he lost his shirt or was hot, or I don't know, but we have this photo of him bare chested. And we created it, without any intention of, getting it out there until we needed to. And, you know, the friends just kept coming over, and the family, and just mobilizing. I remember on the corner that night, on the corner of my mom's house, the cigarette butts that lined the street. It was insane. It was a huge ashtray because everybody was just pacing. Um, I tried my best to figure out a way, to get into the city. And of course, my mom was panicked and she didn't want anybody to go in. And from our corner in Queens, we could see the smoke, and we could smell the smoke. And that was really like just surreal for all of us. Like, just trying to figure out, is it still burning? And they were talking about it burning. And then I remember not sleeping that night, and I got a call. No, um, we never got a call from John. Um, we got calls from his colleagues' wives, who were really, obviously John was close to his colleagues. Um, and then morning came. I mean, I could tell you more about the ordeal that ensued, but that was basically, the day of. It was full of chaos and, not knowing what was going on. And also, the thought that John was going to come home, the hope, the hope that he was going to come home. And when morning came, that hope started to waver. Um, my mom, being a very religious person, didn't um, didn't waver in her hope. She would pray daily, and we thought there was no way, because a year before we had lost another brother. I had lost another brother just a year before 9/11. And so we just kept saying, this isn't going to happen to us again. This isn't going to happen to us again. There's no way, John's going to come home. It's going to be great, and we held that hope for, dare I say, a month. We waited a month for him to come home. And that's when we started putting up the signs and searching for him in the days that followed the first day. Um, should I continue?
Yes, yes, please.
I remember receiving a call once we started with the posters and got the posters out, and friends, we all took shifts, and some of us stayed home to take care of mom, even though we had aunts and uncles and cousins. Everybody was at the house, but we had a team of people that would go into the city and post all around the city and would alternate shifts. And of course, we had our house number on the poster. And I got a call from someone claiming, this just goes to the other side of 9/11, claiming that he found my brother's wallet. And, any bit of information, you held on to that like it was gold. And so the fact that he found his wallet and said to me, I see your picture in his wallet. And, you know, um, I live at such and such address. Do you want to come pick up his wallet? And I thought, well, if he found his wallet on the rubble, then that must mean that John got out. We just hung on and clung on to any kind of thing. And so I spoke to a friend who was a state trooper for the governor's office, and he said, Anthoula, I don't want you going to that address. Let us go take care of it. And the state trooper went to that address, and wouldn't you know, it was false, that people were actually calling these numbers on the missing posters, and lying to families and giving them false hope. That was such an ugly side of 9/11. And I say that just to as a contrast to the beautiful side of 9/11, to the unbelievable amount of support and love and encouragement that we received from just not only family and friends, from complete strangers, coming to the house, offering whatever they could. And I remember we got a call. So we were dead set on the fact that John hit his head, had amnesia, was walking the streets, was in a triage. And as we all know, the triages were empty. But at that time, we were convinced. So we started calling all the hospitals in the tri-state area, as I guess every family member did, right? We we had people go to the hospitals, and we got a call from a doctor who said, I'm Dr. So and so. I'm John's doctor. I'm John's doctor. And we were, like, well, where is he? Where is he? And he said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to startle you, but I was treating John for his cancer. And I remember dropping the phone and thinking, what are you talking about? So apparently, John had a little bout with cancer, and he dealt with it quietly. He didn't want to tell his family. He didn't want to upset us because we had just lost our other brother. And so he figured he would deal with it, with his friends. And this gentleman was so kind. And he said that John was such a joy to be around because he would go and see all the terminally ill patients and make them laugh. And, it was like, he said, I just want you guys to know that, we're thinking of him, and we are praying for you guys. And I mean, we had prayers coming from all around the world, and not to mention we gave interviews to the world. I mean, I don't remember how many interviews I gave and to what outlets, wishing and praying and holding up the missing poster that someone would see him and recognize him and bring him back to us. But obviously, I think 70% of all the 9/11 victims were never recovered. I think it was some kind of like 1,100 or something victims were never recovered, and John was one of them. And which, of course, when you think about why that is and why they couldn't find DNA, his DNA, it is obviously a very hard pill to swallow. But I like to think that John was surrounded by his friends, his colleagues, and probably made them laugh, probably said a prayer, you know, or maybe they all just fell asleep. That brings me comfort, from the smoke and stuff. Um, we had a priest come over, probably from the beginning. We had our family priests over and praying with us. And at some point, as the days progressed, he said, we really should do some kind of a prayer service for him. There's a 40-day mark when a person passes, after a person passes, where you have to sort of read the funeral rites, and only because of that, to protect his soul, we did that. We had a funeral without a casket. And I remember just being in shock. I remember our tiny little church was overwhelmed, so crowded with people. And I just remember people telling me, chin up. You're going to get through this. You're going to get through this. And, I think it was because we had dealt with a very private loss with my first brother that passed away. And this was such a huge public loss. I mean, the difference was just mind blowing. I don't think I slept in that month's time. And I remember, thinking that there were so many good people in the world and that there was so much love available to us. I remember getting through my days by just remembering John and remembering the funny things he would say. He was a real jokester, he was crazy, lunatic, funny. Um, and he really shouldered us through the first death. And so I remember him telling me, ironically, I'm wearing a pink or red today because he would see me wearing black. That was customary after Michael died. And he would say, you're too young and too beautiful to be wearing black and to be mourning like this. Michael wouldn't have wanted it. I want you to be in bright colors. You're so beautiful. I want you to be young and happy and free. And so, Shelley, when John died, I didn't wear black, I wore reds and pinks, and I tried to live my life in his memory, in color, as much as possible. But 20 years later, and I can't fathom that I've lived this long without him. You know, People think that in 20 years, the feelings that you felt that day change, but they don't. I feel the same pain today that I did 20 years ago. And I think it's actually worse because you've lived 20 years without this human being, without, the benefit of more memories and without the benefit of perhaps a sister-in-law or nieces or nephews or, watching him grow up and being there for you as a sibling. It was really, it's really hard. It doesn't, it doesn't change. It doesn't go away. This feeling of hurt, especially because it's all so unknown. We never had anything to bury. We have a cemetery plot and his name's on the tombstone, and I visit the cemetery a lot, but he's not there. I feel like he left his spirit at the site of the World Trade Center, which is why that memorial is so important, I think, to me and to so many families who believe that that's where they took their last breaths. And so I'm really glad that there's something there that honors them and remembers them. And my mom, she's getting on in years, but every time there's a memorial service, every September 11th, she'll be damned if she doesn't go downtown. I have to take her downtown every year for the memorial service. And I'm glad that we have that. I don't know what else to say.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
How old was John?
John was 31 years old.
Oh,
It's so weird that he would have been, God, last September, he would have celebrated his 50th. And I remember going out with his friends and drinking and toasting to him that night that would have been some birthday bash. His 50th birthday would have been killer. And 31 is so young, and he never got married, he didn't have kids. He just didn't have a chance to live his life. He was a bonds broker with Cantor Fitzgerald, but before getting that job, Shelley, when he got out of college with his MBA, he didn't want to get into a suit and tie and work in an office. He decided that he was going to be a blue collar worker, right? He was always very blue collar. So he got a job in construction. He got jobs painting. He got jobs installing windows. He said, I want to learn what it really means to like sweat and be in pain and have long days, before I get into a cushiony seat. Nothing against bond brokers, of course. But I remember he had that grit, that he wanted to be that kind of a man. And I'm so sorry that he never got the chance to develop into the man that he could have been. You know what I mean?
that's so ironic that he wanted that experience because those were the people who responded after and were working on the pile after. And he had experienced that. He had that bond before that tragedy that is almost poetic.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree. All his friends were blue collar workers. They were all like Italian, Greeks, Irish, from the neighborhood, from Queens. And, he grew up with them and, he said, I want to do that. I want to do that. My father was a blue collar worker. He was never the kind of kid who grew up saying, I'm going to get out of this stuff and I'm going to, put on a suit and go to work. No, he wanted to get dirty. He wanted to really make things and create things and build things and he did that. And I'm sure had he survived, he would have been in a lot of pain about our responders. That would have really upset him as it did us, you know, because they went in there to save lives. They didn't have to be there.
And they're dying now.
I know.
Do you feel that you live your life or see life differently than you would have
Had John not passed, right?
or had? Yes, well, you lost two brothers, two different circumstances,
Right.
but
Yes, Shelley, my God, of course. I think I'd be a fool if I didn't learn from those experiences, especially 9/11, the importance of, living each day. And, we say that it's a term that people throw out, I live each day like it's my last. But the truth of the matter is, you could go to work one day and not come home, right? John had plans. John never anticipated dying at 31 years old. Who has that anticipation? So, yeah, I think in particular, because I had the experience of the first brother dying and John's opinion about how I should live my life as a result of that, I knew that I had to live my life in a different way. I had to live my life full of hope, and I had to laugh, and I had to just move forward because I know that John would have wanted that. I know that John would have wanted me to have a happy life and to be optimistic and to not be a martyr and not feel the doom and gloom of those events for the rest of my life. Of course, there are moments where I get down and I get upset. I mean, I'm crying through this entire interview. Um, but I know, and maybe it's because John was that kind of a person that I feel like I've sort of taken on his personality in a way. There are lots of his friends after the fact, as time went on, who said, "Oh my God, that's something John would have said," or "Oh my God, that facial thing, you look just like Johnny in a second." So I think I've become a little sillier. I think I think I've become a little more outspoken. I think I've been just more solid in my needs and wants and desires. I think I've been, more compassionate. It's taught me a lot about compassion and empathy because I received so much of that, and I'll always be grateful for that because it really filled my heart, and it really goes to show you that if we could all just be a kinder people, to one another, if we could just be kinder and more compassionate, so much good can come out of that. I know that sounds a little Pollyanna-ish, but I really believe that. I really believe that. So I try to live every single day like that. And that could be something simple like, hey, good morning, and reading someone's tag at the supermarket, the cashier, and saying their name. I love doing that, because they look down and they're like, wait, how'd you know my name? But it always leads to a conversation and just a smile. I think smiling a lot is really important in my life. I mean, every time I get hit with bad news, in the last 20 years, yeah, I'll cry about it and I'll mourn whatever it is that I'm upset about. And some things take a little longer, but eventually I get through them. And I think that John is that inspiration for me. I feel like his voice is always in my head. Wear color, Thula. Be happy. So I try to do that.
Is there anything else you want to add?
I just want to, tell all, 9/11 family members and the extended family members who are now losing their loved ones because of the toxins in the air. We became a member of this club that no one signed up for. Um, and we don't speak often throughout the year, but every year on 9/11 when we gather at the memorial, it's really wonderful to see everyone and meet their spouses or their kids or how the grandkids have grown. And we have lunch, and there's certain family members that we connect with on 9/11. And you know I just want to give a big shout out to all of those wonderful families who are dealing with their grief, some better than others, and to offer just my love and prayers for them, because Shelley, 20 years is a long time. It's not really a long time, you know. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anthoula.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
It's my honor.